Let's read a passage from the History of At-Tabari to see what happened. The History of At-Tabari, Volume 6, page 108. When the messenger of God saw how his tribe turned their backs on him and was grieved to see them shunning the message he had brought to them from God, he longed in his soul that something would come to him from God which would reconcile him with his tribe. With his love for his tribe and his eagerness for their welfare, it would have delighted him if some of the difficulties which they had made for him could have been smoothed out, and he debated with himself and fervently desired such an outcome. Then God revealed, "By the star when it sets, your comrade does not err, nor is he deceived, nor does he speak out of his own desire." That's the beginning of Surah 53 of the Quran. And when he came to the words, "Have you thought upon Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat, the third, the other," that's verses 19 through 20 of Surah 53, Satan cast on his tongue, because of his inner debates and what he desired to bring to his people, the words, "These are the high-flying cranes. Verily their intercession is accepted with approval." That last part was originally the next verse of Surah 53. Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat were three pagan goddesses. When Surah 53 was revealed, the Quran called them the high-flying cranes whose intercession is accepted with approval, meaning that Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat were like birds that could carry your prayers to Allah. Muhammad bowed down in honor of this revelation, and as usual, his followers bowed down with him. But the polytheists were so delighted that Muhammad had finally approved of their gods, they joined in and prostrated themselves because of the reference to their gods which they had heard, so that there was no one in the mosque, believer or unbeliever, who did not prostrate himself. So the pagans were bowing down in worship with Muhammad and his followers because Muhammad and the Quran had shown respect for their goddesses. But Muhammad's friendly relations with the polytheists didn't last long. He soon learned that his verses praising pagan goddesses didn't come from Allah, they came from Satan. Gabriel visited Muhammad and said, "Muhammad, what have you done? You have recited to the people that which I did not bring to you from God, and you have said that which was not said to you." This is the angel Gabriel telling Muhammad that he delivered a revelation that didn't come from God. Saddened to recognize his treachery against Allah, Muhammad lamented, "I have fabricated things against God and have imputed to him words which he has not spoken." So both Gabriel and Muhammad plainly state that Muhammad meets the criteria of a false prophet in Deuteronomy 18:20. Muhammad remained grief-stricken and anxious until the revelation of the verse, "Never did we send a messenger or a prophet before you," to the words, "God is knower, wise." Let's read the entire verse to see how Allah comforted Muhammad after Muhammad humiliated himself by advocating shirk. The verse reads, "Never did we send a messenger or a prophet before you, but when he recited the revelation or narrated or spoke, Satan threw some falsehood in it. But Allah abolishes that which Satan throws in. Then Allah establishes his revelations, and Allah is all-knower, all-wise." So Allah tells Muhammad, don't feel bad about delivering a revelation from the devil. All of Allah's messengers deliver a revelation from the devil from time to time. But don't worry about it because Allah eventually cleans up the mess. The next verse explains why Allah allows Satan to trick and deceive his messengers. That he, Allah, may make what is thrown in by Satan a trial for those in whose hearts is a disease and whose hearts are hardened. Are you getting this? Allah lets Satan deliver false revelations through Allah's true prophets in order to test people. Notice that we're not just talking about a story from later Muslim sources. Quran verses were revealed in response to the Satanic verses. And yet most Muslims claim that Muhammad never delivered the Satanic verses and that the story was made up. The problem is that there are tons of sources reporting various versions of this story. I have 37 Muslim sources reporting the Satanic Verses affair, and these sources can be traced back to some very important early Muslims. Of the 37 sources we have for this story, 6 go back to Ka'b al-Kharazi, one of Islam's greatest early Quran scholars. 5 go back to Urwa ibn al-Zubair, an early Meccan scholar who's known as the founder of the study of the life of Muhammad. He was also Aisha's nephew, Abu Bakr's grandson, and the son of Abu Bakr's daughter Asma. 2 go back to Abu Bakr ibn Abdul Rahman ibn al-Harith, one of the top scholars in Islamic law during the 1st century. 5 go back to Abu al-Aliya al-Basri, another of the greatest Quran scholars of the 1st century. He studied the Quran with Caliph Umar, Ubay ibn Ka'b, Zayd ibn Thabit, and Ibn Abbas. 2 go back to al-Sudi, another early scholar who studied with Ibn Abbas. 1 comes from the tafsir of Muhammad ibn al-Sa'ib al-Kalbi, an early commentator who composed the longest tafsir that had been written up until his time. 4 reports go back to Qatada ibn Diama, one of Islam's greatest early commentators. 1 goes back to al-Dahak ibn Muzahim al-Balki, a 1st century expert in tafsir. 1 goes back to Ikrimah, a slave of Ibn Abbas and an expert on the life of Muhammad. We have 6 reports that go back to Ibn Abbas himself, the founder of Quran studies, and we have several that go back to Sa'id ibn Jubair, one of the leading Quran scholars of his time and one of the top students of Ibn Abbas. Some of Ibn Abbas's narratives go through Sa'id ibn Jubair. So this story is all over the early Muslim community.
Assalamu alaikum and hello to my non-Muslim viewers. Christian psychopath David Wood, video about the Satanic Verses, saying that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, uttered the Satanic Verses, and that makes the Prophet Muhammad, that allegedly makes the Prophet Muhammad a false prophet according to the Bible, according to the Old Testament, in the book of Deuteronomy. So his argument is basically that Moses would have executed the Prophet Muhammad because the Prophet Muhammad spoke verses not from God, and this is according to Deuteronomy 18, chapter 18, verse 18 through 20. So as you've seen in the video clip, before, that David Wood cites from. So I'm just going to be dissecting this entire story. I'm just going to be refuting this entire Satanic Verses story, because the story is always brought up by Christian critics of Islam. So what is the source David Wood cites? He cites this source. The first source he cites is this book, The History of Al-Tabari, Volume 6, page 108. Now, in Islam, in order to see if a story is true or not, we have to look at the isnad, or we have to look at the chain of transmission. So that's the only way we can figure out whether a story is authentic, a hadith or a story of the Prophet Muhammad, not just about the Prophet Muhammad, but any Islamic figure, whether it's Umar bin Khattab, Abu Bakr, Ali, Aisha, Ibn Abbas, etc., whoever it is in Muslim, any kind of Muslim figure, early Muslim figure, we have to look at the chain of transmission to see whether that story about that figure, whether it's the Prophet Muhammad or any other early Muslim, we have to look at the isnad, or the chain of transmission, to see if that story is authentic or not. So David Wood cites this book, The History of Al-Tabari. Now, looking at the chain of transmission, to be honest, you don't even have to look at the chain of transmission. Look at the source he's citing. He's citing The History of Al-Tabari. I have The History of Al-Tabari. I have The History of Al-Tabari, Volume 1, and this is all you need to refute the history of. This is all you need to refute Al-Tabari. So if you read, this is Volume 1. The History of Al-Tabari, Volume 1. So basically, Al-Tabari wrote an entire volume set. I think it's 40 volumes of history about from Adam and Eve all the way up to the Arab wars with the Persians. But anyways, in the History of Al-Tabari, page 100, and in the History of Al-Tabari, page 168 to page 168 to 100 and page 171, basically Al-Tabari admits that his book is filled with weak and authentic stories about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He says So this book of mine may be found to contain some information mentioned by us on the authority of certain men of the past, which the reader may disapprove of, or the listener may find detestable, because he can find nothing sound and no real meaning in it. In such case, he should know that it is not our fault that such information comes to us, but the fault of someone who transmitted it to us. We have merely reported it as it was reported to us. So basically what Al-Tabari is saying is that he collected authentic and inauthentic stories about the Prophet Muhammad. Al-Tabari is basically blaming the fault of the narrator of that story. He says, but the fault of someone who transmitted it to us. So Al-Tabari is admitting that there are unreliable narrators in his book. And this is found in Al-Tabari, page 170 to page 171. And 106, Al-Tabari volume 1, page 170 to page 171. So, all you have to do is buy the History of Al-Tabari volume 1, read volume 1, page 170 to 171. Basically, Al-Tabari is admitting that his books are filled with authentic and inauthentic stories about the Prophet Muhammad. And again, it's the History of Al-Tabari, volume 1. So David Wood's basically citing a weak source. As for the Isnad, in the History of Al-Tabari, in Al-Tabari volume 6, it says Ibn Humayd, Salma, Muhammad ibn Ishaq, Yazid bin Zayd al-Madani, Muhammad bin Gab al-Qurazi. So basically, the chain of transmission is in the chain of transmission there's Ibn Humayyad, and Ibn Humayyad has been proven to be a weak narrator. So there's already a weak narrator in Al-Tabari volume 6. So already the story is weak because there's a weak narrator, which is Ibn Humayyad. So basically the story is already weak because of the weak narrator in there, or there's a weakness in the isnad, or the chain of transmission. So what else does he say? He says that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, allegedly said, "I have fabricated things against God, and I have imputed to him words which he has not spoken." And again, this is found in Al-Tabari volume 6. So again, if we read the isnad for that story is Al-Qasim bin Al-Hasan Al-Hussein bin Duwayd Hijah Abu Manshur, Muhammad bin Kab al-Khazari, and Muhammad bin Qaya. So there's weakness in the chain of transmission. The chain of transmission includes Muhammad bin the chain of transmission includes Abu Mashar, who's been shown to be a weak narrator, who's been shown to be a very weak narrator, or a very weak chain of transmitter. So, a hadith transmitter. So basically, there's weaknesses in the isnad, or chain of transmission, for the Satanic Verses story, and in this saying that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, allegedly saying, "I have fabricated things against God, and I've imputed to him words which he has not spoken." Abu Mashar reported the story. So again, I'm quoting from, he's quoting from the source, Al-Tabari volume 6, page 108 through 110. I have the book right here. This is the paperback version. I have the paperback version right here, which is the History of Al-Tabari, volume 6. So, now, if you want to go further Muslims saying that the Satanic Verses story is false and stuff like that. I recommend this book, The Prophet of Islam, a biography of the Prophet of Islam, Volume 1, where you can read that there was a bunch of Muslim scholars who have said that the Satanic Verses story is false. Like according to several Muslim scholars, they've said that the Satanic Verses story is false. For example, he's so several Muslim scholars have said that the Satanic Verses story is false. Ibn Kathir said that many commentators of the Quran have mentioned this story, but all of them have the name of the companion narrator at the top missing. I have not come across a single narration complete of chain. Allah knows best. And Ibn Kathir says this in Tafsir Ibn Kathir, Volume 3, page 229. Gayad Iyad seems to have several sources before him. He said that there are broken chains of narration that carry different versions of the story, some which are contradictory statements. And then he says that there's no chain of transmission directly from a disciple or a companion of the Prophet Muhammad. So most of the chain of transmissions are worthless when it comes to the Satanic Verses story. And Gayad Iyad said this in Al-Shifa, Volume 2, page 750. And Ibn Hajar says that all of them are untrustworthy narrators except Sa'id bin Jubair. When Ibn Hajar looked at all the chains of transmission, and Ibn Hajar says this in Fath al-Bari, Volume 18, page 41. Sheikh Al-Bani has also written a short book about this topic. He has demonstrated the weaknesses or spuriousness of every one of them. He also demonstrated that these reports are disconnected chains of transmission. That means the chain of transmission miss a companion or a disciple of the Prophet Muhammad. And this is found in Sheikh Albani's work, Al-Dahali of Bakaini, Volume 2, page 287 to 291. Dr. Muhammad Mustafa Al-Azami has also said that the Satanic Verses story is false. This is found in his book of Maghazi of Rasul, page 107. Ibn Abu Hatim Razi also said that the story is false, and this is found in Jarhu wa Ta'dil, page 351. Sheikh Abu Sa'ba in his book Al-Siratu Nabawiyya fi Dawil Quran was Sunnah, Volume 1, page 367, has discredited the story because of language reasons. So there's language problems with the Satanic Verses story, and Dr. Shami has pointed out that the period of revelation also destroys the credibility of the story. And he said this in his book Min Ma Inisira, page 76. so there's several Muslim scholars, not just one or two, but several of them, who have said that the Satanic Verses story is false. And again, you can find this in this book, the Prophet of Islam. In light of original sources of an analytical study, volume 1. By Dr. Mahdi Rizak Ahmad. So again, this book, I just recommend buying this book and reading it for yourself. And as for other Muslim scholars, Muslim scholars like even Ibn Ishaq said that the Satanic Verses story is false. So Ibn Ishaq wrote an entire book about this issue about Satanic Verses being false, and this is found in Al-Bashar Mufti Al-Fi Tafsir, volume 7, page 526. Ibn Sa'd also said that the Satanic Verses is false because Al-Waqidi is a known liar, reported it to him. And this is found in Ibn Sa'd, volume 1, page 205. Ibn Hajar in volume 8, page 439 gives reasons why the Satanic Verses story is false. Al-Bakani says that this story has not been proven to be correct by the rules of reporting. This is found in Tafsir al-Razak, volume 11, page 135. Ibn Hazm also declared that the Satanic Verses story is a forgery and there's no reliable chain of transmission for it. In Ibn Hazm, Al-Fasil Famil, volume 2, page 308 to 309 to page 311. Imam Razi in his Tafsir, volume 11, page 135, Qazi Abu Bakr bin al-Arabi in his Tafsir, or in his book, volume 2, page 126, and Al-Alusu in his Tafsir, volume 13, page 99, have rejected the story altogether. So there's several Muslim scholars, not just one or two, but several of them, who have rejected the Satanic Verses story. Now, and David Wood states that Ibn Abbas and others have mentioned the story. Al-Dahak and Arwa bin Zubair and other early Muslim scholars. He says that 37 scholars mentioned the Satanic Verses story. Well, 37 fabricated narrations are still 37 fabricated narrations. It doesn't matter how many narrations you have. If they're not reliable, they're not reliable. So, in the end of the day, there's no fully connected chain of transmission going back to the Prophet, going back to, any of the disciples of Prophet Muhammad, going back to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, himself. And, you can just, there's other books you can read regarding this. Muslim scholars, and another book I would recommend is this book, Sirat al-Nabi, volume 1, by Allama Shabili Nomani. So in this book, on volume 1, page 196, Al-Zarquni, Al-Iyad, and Al-Ani, commentary of Al-Bukhari and Nubar al-Nabras. So these are other Muslim scholars who have said that the Satanic Verses story is false. And Imam Nawawi says in his commentary, says nothing in it is correct. Neither is it authentically reported, nor does it stand to reason. Al-Ani too has pressed his opinions in similar words. So there are several Muslim scholars who have said that the Satanic Verses story is false. And Ibn Hajar also says all the narrations that talk about the Satanic Verses is Mursal traditions, and those who believe in Mursal traditions may argue under, so they're all Mursal traditions. And Al-Zarquni, Al-Mawahib, volume 1, page 330. And again, I'm reading from Sirat al-Nabi, The Life of Muhammad, volume 1, by Allama Shafi Nomani. So, and David Wood also says that Ibn Abbas narrated the story. Well, I have with me this book, Sirat al-Nabi and the Orientalist by Muhammad Mohar Ali. So this is volume 1. What this book does is he goes, since David Wood just plagiarizes off Orientalists and other European critics of Islam. So basically, in the early, I think, 19th century or the early 20th century, there were Orientalists like William Watt, and other Orientalists who were European critics of Islam and stuff like that. They would say that they would point the finger at Islam using early Muslim sources like Ibn Ishaq. They thought that Ibn Ishaq, al-Waqidi, Ibn Sa'd, al-Tabari, these were the most reliable sources, or early historical reliable sources, and they would point the finger at Islam, saying, yeah, Prophet Muhammad did the Satanic Verses and stuff like that using these early sources because they thought that was reliable. But in fact, Ibn Ishaq, al-Waqidi, Ibn Sa'd, and al-Tabari aren't reliable sources. But anyways, and they would come to conclusions, ripping stories out and then putting it into their work. So using those for early sources or allegedly early sources. So, but again, as for the saying about Ibn Abbas saying the Satanic Verses, well, according to Qayyad Iyad, he says that as for this claim that the story goes all the way back to Ibn Abbas, Qayyad Iyad points out that the main narrator in this version, Subah, explicitly points out that he only supposes that the report comes from Ibn Abbas, and this is found in Qayyad Iyad, volume 2, page 118. And this is also said by Sheikh Al-Bani in his book, Nasab al-Majanik li Nafs Qisat al-Gar-Anik, pages 4 to 18. So basically, there's no chain of transmission that comes from Ibn Abbas. There's no explicit or there's no proven chain of transmission that comes from Ibn Abbas. The narrator, Subah, says that it supposedly came from Ibn Abbas. So even Subah is not sure it came from Ibn Abbas. And Ibn Abbas, the reason why it's impossible that the story goes back to Ibn Abbas is because Ibn Abbas was not an eyewitness to the alleged Satanic Verses, for Ibn Abbas was born 3 years before Hijrah, so this was 5 years after the alleged incident. So even Ibn al-Ghabi is a unreliable reporter. So so there's no chain of transmission going all the way back to Ibn Abbas. The Isnad doesn't go back to the Isnad doesn't go beyond the second generation after the Prophet. So only one of the versions comes from Sa'id bin Jubair, is traced back to Ibn Abbas. But as Qayyad Iyad points out, the main narrator in this version, Shabba, explicitly points out that he only supposes that the report comes from Ibn Abbas. And this is found in Qayyad Iyad, Al-Shifa, volume 2, page 118. So, there's no proven chain of transmission going back to Ibn Abbas. Shabba only thought, or he supposed, that the chain of transmission goes back to Ibn Abbas. So but regardless, Ibn Abbas was not an eyewitness to the alleged event or the incident, for he was only born 3 years before the Hijrah, some 5 years after the alleged incident. So Ibn Abbas did not see the Satanic Verses, so he's not an eyewitness to it. So Ibn Abbas was born 5 years after the Satanic Verses, so it's impossible for Ibn Abbas to be an eyewitness to the Satanic Verses. And again, I'm reading from this book, Sirat al-Nabi and the Orientalist, Volume 1, page... and this person does a good job in refuting the story on page 683 to 702. So this is found in, and again, this is found in Sirat al-Nabi and the Orientalist by Muhammad Mohar Ali, Volume 1, pages 683 to 702. So I'm going to put a PDF format of this book down below so you can see for yourselves. So, it's not true that, Ibn Ishaq and al-Waqidi, Ibn Sa'd, and al-Tabari, these were the earliest biographies of the Prophet Muhammad. That's not true. If you read this book, Early Sources for the Prophet Muhammad's Biography by Dr. Muhammad Saeed Mitwali al-Rahwan, this book, he shows that there were several biographies before Ibn Ishaq and things like that. So it's not true that, Ibn Ishaq and all those people were the earliest and things like that. Now, you might be saying, what's the best biography of the Prophet Muhammad? And it would be this book, the prophetic biography, Sirah of Ibn Hisham. So Ibn Hisham wrote 6 volumes. This is volume 1. 6 volumes of the Prophet's biography and stuff like that. So, in conclusion, Satanic Verses story is false. Christian critics of Islam need to stop, mentioning the story and stuff like that. As for the Quran, as for those Quran verses of Quran chapter 17 and Quran chapter, the Quran chapter 22, the reason for those revelations, I would just suggest reading Tafsir Ibn Kathir and stuff like that. It has nothing to do with the Satanic Verses. The Quran chapter 17 and the verse in the Quran chapter 17 and the verse in the Quran chapter 22 were general verses revealed. They had nothing to do with the Satanic Verses. They were just general commands to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It has nothing to do with the Satanic Verses. So this video completely debunks the Satanic Verses story. The Satanic Verses story is false. There's no chain of transmission going all the way back to Ibn Abbas, going back to the Prophet Muhammad. So I've completely debunked the Satanic Verses story. The Satanic Verses story of the Prophet Muhammad is false. Period. End of story. Thanks, Salam.